boys and girls. This is Neurotics here, and I'm really excited to say I voted today. I voted absentee. I did it from home. I didn't even know that was possible that you could do that, but in Minnesota, apparently it is. And I voted Democrat all the way. And then, if I didn't know what they were, if they were women, that's who I voted for. And I wrote this little thing on Facebook. I'm sure my parents will absolutely adore this, but I wrote on a Facebook post saying, "Do something with your free time and change this once wonderful country back into a better place, rather than the cesspool of hate, misogyny, and bigotry it has become. Vote people." So that's what I think. This country has become a wasteland of just absolute hate, spite, malice. That's a card game. And I just I think we've lost ourselves since Trump. I've named him before, Trump, but from now on, I think I'm just gonna refer to him as he who shall not be named, like Voldemort. So anyway, this country's become very hateful, and I was talking to a friend, and they were crying, and it was a I have a few friends. I don't have very many male friends, but I had a friend, and they were crying, and I want to say, it's okay to cry. I cry a lot. I cry all the time. It's not a big deal, and it's you're in good company when you're crying around me. You're in good company, and I just wanted to get that out of the way and talk about it a little bit. That there's this whole taboo about men crying, and the thing is, it's okay. It's all right. It's okay to cry and feel your feelings. That's one of the things that I had to learn about when I got into recovery was you have to learn to feel your feelings. You can't numb them. You shouldn't like dampen them down. You just gotta roll with it, and you gotta feel them and accept those feelings and just deal with them. Okay, and sometimes you gotta talk to people. And I told my friend, you're like my best friend, So anything you gotta say to me, you can say to me, and you can cry, and I'll be here for you. And that's true with all my friends. Anybody who wants to cry, please, feel free to cry around me. So I'm going on a rant, but I've got an amazing guest today. Her name is Ashley, and she is transgendered, and I wanted to just talk about that and build up awareness about that, as well as just talk about life. We're all people. We're all here on this world, and and so I will be bringing her out shortly. Ashley, hi.
Hi.
How are we doing today?
Uh, Trying to go on with life.
Trying to go on with life. What's Can you want to expound upon that?
Well, other than the fact that we've just had 14 people who were sent pipe bombs, and then there's a synagogue shot up today in Pittsburgh.
Oh shit! I heard about that. Oh my god! Yeah, I know. It's gotten to the point where there are actually some synagogues now where they actually will, they're security checkpoints I heard that a rabbi was actually telling their congregants, where all the exits were in case, there was like an attack. This is where our country is right now, people. Like, this is a real thing. Here's the deal. My synagogue does not have those security checkpoints, but I'm still one of those paranoid, neurotic people. who still always looks at exits pretty much wherever I go, but now especially synagogues. I don't go very often to synagogue, but when I do, I check the exits and I'm like, where could I possibly hide? Where could I possibly hide? And this is the world we're living in. But anyway, so we're here to talk about Ashley. Ashley and I met at work. We won't, as usual, mention the company we work for, just for liability reasons. But I just want to talk to her about just everything, just the whole gamut of things. So, you were born with a different name. I think you referred to it as your dead name, right?
Yes.
Are you okay sharing what that is? Okay.
Yeah, just not something I really like to go into. It
Sure.
Finally got it legally changed back in September.
I know. I was so excited to hear about that.
So that's been a positive. To not have to worry about that. It's been a bit of a fight trying to change it with my insurance.
Right.
Trying to get that taken care of is
Right.
really the last step. And then with what our dumbass president is trying to do now, I also have to try and fight with the state to get my birth certificate changed so that I don't have to worry about that down the road when he inevitably tries to erase an entire group or multiple groups of people. Jesus. Considering of course, there's non-binary people and everyone else who doesn't identify towards the gender spectrum.
Right. Yeah, no, it's I know that you and I have discussed this, and I know how much of a struggle it was getting your name changed. And when I heard that you got it changed, I mean, I was kind of doing like a little happy dance. I think it was at home, and I read it on Facebook. But let's just start from the beginning. Where are you from? Where's your hometown?
So I'm actually born in Cloquet. So I am from pretty much the Iron Range. Slowly moved and ended up migrating my way down to Mankato. 17, 18 moves later, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking annoying.
Yeah, moving around it's stressful. It's stressful and it's obnoxious, and it's like you have to start over again wherever you go.
Yeah, and I mean, I've only lived in the Mankato area for less than 2 years, but I moved here last April 2017, and then I moved up to North Mankato back in January.
Wow. Okay. So you really haven't been here that long, have you?
Not in Mankato,
No.
but I was working here for a year and a half before I actually moved.
Okay. What were your talk to me about your parents? Were your parents? What are your parents like?
That is a hard question to answer because
parents are a hard thing to deal with. Period.
Well, my dad's changed a lot. When I was growing up, he was, and he'll admit this freely, he was very into using alcohol and using drugs. Pretty much anything that you can think of except meth is what he said he used. From the time that he was like probably, I think, a teenager up until I got into my teenage years, so probably a good 30 years, if not longer. And then he was an alcoholic pretty much from the time I was about 12 until I graduated high school, but he's changed off of that. And then my mom, I don't really have a ton in common with her, so she's kind of, she does have, of course, do PCA work, but other than that, she's just kind of sitting at home other than doing that. And then, they also have my youngest brother who, surprisingly enough, is actually a junior in high school, and I didn't fucking know that.
Yeah, I don't have any kids, but man, they grow up and it happens in a blink. And yeah, so as far as growing up, I mean, and like I said, we're digging deep today. Yeah. I think you've mentioned to me that you knew that you were transgender. You didn't feel comfortable in your own skin at a pretty early age.
Yep. About the time that I was 5 years old or so.
Wow.
I've got a lot more detail on my own blog, which you can pull it up on Facebook, which is North Star Girl. And it's gotten a lot deeper, and there's going to be... I've already gotten one part down. I have a second part that I'm just trying to actually get published, and then there's a third part that I've just got to write up. But it digs a lot deeper. But about the age of 5 is when I knew I just wasn't comfortable with, with my body, and that's not a lot of trans people know it at that young of an age. A lot of trans people find it out later in life.
Yeah. How did you, was there anything, how did you, I guess, and this is, how did you just know? Was there a sense of like dysphoria? I know gender dysphoria is common in young people who are, non-binary.
Yep. At that age, you really don't know much about your own body. There's not really much separating boys and girls at that young of an age.
Right.
Other than genitalia at the bottom, but gender roles. That was my biggest thing, is I didn't fit into a traditional male gender role, and I never ever have. And from the time I was young through the time I came out when I was 22, I had to heavily compensate for that.
Really? How did you, when you say, and how old are you now?
26.
26. I know it's impolite to ask women how old they are, but
it's actually been just over 3 years since I came out, because I came out just before I turned 23.
Okay, all right.
So I'm not ashamed to talk about that. It's
sure,
it is what it is.
Now, so your friends had no idea, and I think you showed me you used to play football, right?
Yes. So there was a few people who actually knew. I think the first 2 people who knew for sure were my friend Cassie from high school.
Right.
I think I told her my junior or senior year, and my friend JC that I've known since I was 17. She was either the first or second person to know. It was Cassie and JC were the first 2 people to know. And they knew 5 years before I came out that I was trans.
Right.
Cassie, I'm pretty sure knew before I graduated high school that I was. Was
there a lot of, growing up, was there a lot of fear? As far as, somebody like finding out, or just I know that you hit it pretty well, but was there a lot of fear growing up? And especially in where you lived?
It was 2-pronged. So I grew up for the most part, while I was born in Cloquet, I for the most part grew up in and around Lester Prairie. For people who don't know where that is, have fun finding it on a map. It's about an hour west of the Twin Cities. It is literally halfway between Mankato and St. Cloud and the Twin Cities and Wilmer. So it is right in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It's a town of about 1,200 people. There was 120 people in my high school, and my graduating class had 27 people in it. So extremely small. But the twofold was being such a small town. Gender roles were massively enforced. Boys were boys, girls were girls. There was no in between. There's no crossing that line. So in and of itself, I knew had I come out in high school, I, in my own words, would have been chased out of the damn county. Not just the town, but the whole fucking county.
Wow. That's crazy.
We're talking about the county where I don't know if anyone remembers this, but a few years ago when I was still living up there, it was actually the state representative from that county who lives in Glencoe who came out and tried to push forward the bathroom bill in Minnesota.
Wow. I have to ask you a question.
Shoot.
Do you need something to drink?
I have water right there.
You have water. Okay, good deal. See, my wife texted me wanting to know if we need anything to drink. I'm going to text her, no, we're fine.
I always come prepared. I do a lot with sports, so I've always got to be prepared for this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. So, all right, where were we? All right.
The other part of that was...
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no worries. The other part of that actually happened to do with my family, with knowing how they were. My dad growing up, when I was growing up, boy, he was very homophobic and very transphobic, and he made that very apparent at a very young age. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he made it known to me about the time I was 6 or 7, when I really wanted to tell my parents this stuff. He made it known that it was not okay to be different, that it was not okay to be trans, because he had been, at that point, bashing a trans coworker or something like that.
Seriously?
I can't remember exactly. I was young, but I know it was instilled in my head that coming out was not okay. My mom, I figured, would probably have my back, but it was really with my dad, and then with my brothers. I knew my dad would have bailed on the house and bailed on the family, and years later, after I came out, probably I think last year, maybe 2 years ago, he flat out told me, yeah, had I come out before I did, he would have left in high and dry with everyone, with my mom to take care of.
Seriously?
Yeah, he admitted that. So my mom would have had to take care of 4 kids by herself.
Wow. He sounds like a real slice of heaven.
He's gotten a lot better, though.
Has he?
Yes.
That's good. In what way?
He's actually asked that when I do have my surgery, if I want him there. So that was definitely a big part.
That is really awesome.
He's been extremely accepting. Since probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years after I came out, it's been kind of a change for him, but he's definitely gotten better in that aspect, from thinking that this was, a plea for attention from me, to actually being like, no, this is who you are, and you're being who you are, and that's fine with me.
That's awesome. Now, obviously, when you're going through this transition, you have to go through hormone replacement therapy, also known as HRT. How long has that been going on for?
About 2.5 years. I came out immediately after I came out. I actually set up my original appointment at Family Tree Clinic up in St. Paul. Took about 6 months to get in there, get on my hormones. So it's been about 2.5 years that I've been on hormones. And now I've actually been going through Mayo Clinic, because where they're the closest place that actually does surgery, and they are going to do full rounds with me now, so that I'm just going to go through them for hormones, for surgery, for all of that kind of stuff, so I don't have to split my time between driving to Rochester and driving up to St. Paul to go to that clinic. And it's kind of nice because of all the construction on 35.
Oh God, that's awful.
It's damn near impossible to get up to that clinic without it taking taking 2 hours now. So if I have a 9 o'clock appointment, I would have to leave at 6:30 in the morning just to make sure I could get there on time.
Wow. So this has always been something, and I don't know if I've asked you this before, but what made you decide to go with Ashley?
I've always liked the name. Ever since I was little, I've liked the name. I can't remember how I started liking it, but I did. And then actually the spelling I stole from a girl I actually dated back in high school.
Yeah.
It's actually my first girlfriend, how she spelled her name, and I liked it, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to use this one. I decided that's what I was going to use when I came out and everything.
Right. And, I was going to say, as far as the therapy, the HRT goes, how does it feel? What do you go through? What does your body go through?
Best description I can give is it's like going through second puberty, both emotionally and physically.
Yeah.
The development is, especially breast development, it definitely can be painful some days.
Really?
Yeah, my friend Danny's hit me there multiple times.
Oh no.
That
hurts anyway.
Yeah, well, we both do it to each other, and we're kind of being assholes to each other. So, it definitely can hurt when it's starting to grow. Eventually, they just get big enough. I mine are probably getting close to that point, which is, or I'm gonna end up having breast augmentation done at some point. So that's really the best thing I can say is it's going through a second puberty physically and emotionally.
Yeah. As far as the we've talked about your name, Ashley. I mean, were there any struggles as far as just remembering to be like because I think you once told me that somebody was calling you by your dead name at where we worked, and you were just like, "Oh my God, leave me alone."
Yeah, that happened. That happened at work. It was twice. I ended up talking to somebody, and then that didn't happen again. It really wasn't a struggle because when I started working where we worked, because I no longer work there.
Right.
But when I started working there, it was probably halfway through training is when I came out. I came out to our training class and was like, I'm coming out. I am, and did all of that. Because I'd been seeing my therapist in Hutchinson, which was closest to where I lived at the time, and was just like, she knew since I had gone into inpatient 6 months before this, so we're talking 3.5 years ago now. But she knew when I was an inpatient that I was trans, and just got to the point where I needed to come out. It came out, I think, 4 weeks into it would have been about a month into training. And came out, and no one, everyone was fine with it. I got everything changed pretty much immediately, to where I never, even when I went on to my first supervisor, it was always going with Ashley. It was, never doing that. And that was a conscious decision I made because I wanted to make sure it was done before I got to a point where it was like, okay, now everyone has to relearn everything here, instead of just being like, here's my name, deal with it.
Yeah. And have there been any issues with the whole pronoun, like, when somebody says, he or she, or have you ever had any issues with that?
Depending on where I go, it's really been outside of work. I mean, I had a couple phone calls I had to make yesterday, and they misgendered me, and I was like, a person was calling me sir, and it's like, no, it's ma'am, and they're like, oh shit, kind of thing, and I'm like, yeah,
I get that too, surprisingly.
So it was just something where it's really been outside of work that I've had that issue. It comes up less and less often now. So it's been pretty nice to not really have to worry about that. Right.
So are you in a relationship right now?
Oh God, no.
No. Because I was going to say, I know you in the past, and I don't know if this is off the record, but you mentioned in the past that you've been engaged a few times. I mean, is that? Can we talk about that?
The relationships that I've had, I pretty much started from the time I was 17, just towards the end of my junior year, up until pretty much last fall. I've been consistently in relationships. Every one of those except one, which was with my my now friend Angela. I haven't talked to her in a long time, but I need to reach out to her. But every one of those, but the one with her, it was the other person leaving me, and that's continued in the 2 relationships I've had this year, which, I pretty much, except for 2 months, been single since last fall, which has been extremely nice that I've been able to actually try and find myself. Yeah. Because not only with coming out, but with being in consistent relationships, it's tough. A lot of people, and it also has to do with my depression, and people have said, how do people deal with it when they don't know who they are? And it's not easy to deal with that, because when you finally get that chance and you try and start figuring it out, especially in your mid-20s, you're like, who the fuck am I, and what the hell do I like to do?
Depression's a bitch on its own. I mean, I can imagine it's just gotta be like magnified a gazillion times, and in your situation?
I wouldn't say the depression is magnified that much. I would say the depression it's really the other way around. I would say depression really magnifies the gender dysphoria, because part of the reason that you're depressed is because, at least for myself, was because, from the time I was 5 until I was 22, almost 23, for 18 years, I had to hide who I was. And that added up into my depression quite a bit. It has subsided a little bit, but my depression is still absolute hell, and I have to be on meds for it, and I'm not going to be ashamed to say it. I have to be on meds for depression and anxiety. It happens.
Me too. I am Spartacus. Now we come to the fun part, politics. So, and I have a feeling this is the part where it's going to take up a lot of our time, which is totally cool. I have nowhere to be, but the state of our country. What the fuck? How do you feel about? I mean, what's going on? I mean, this country is fucked, right?
Yeah, I will say this right off the bat. I am a pretty staunch democratic socialist. So communism, socialism would not be that far off from where I am. I'm the depressing part is, on a lot of my issues, however, I'm very much considered far left in that extreme socialist category in this country, but that's because our political spectrum is skewed so far to the right, it's fucking crazy.
It's crazy.
In every other country, I would be considered center left, and that just shows you how skewed and how fucked up everything is here. Because yes, for things like guns, no, I do think gun control should be used, but I don't think we need to get rid of all of them. I grew up in Minnesota. You use guns for hunting. There's shit that guns are actually necessary for, but we shouldn't have people going around on the fucking streets who have assault rifles. And people do it.
Yeah. And, I was talking about, in an earlier episode that, when Trump got elected, for a while I was just thinking, man, people have gotten meaner. But the thing is, I don't think people have gotten meaner. I think people were mean, and now they just have an excuse now to be meaner. It's like unlocked the assholiness of people. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it was always there, or do you think or do you think people have progressively become meaner than they were, or do you think it was always there?
I think it's a combination of three things. I actually, it's always been buried deep in this country, especially things like racism, homophobia, transphobia, anti-Semitic shit, all that kind of stuff. But Trump getting elected, and the fact that, Republicans control both the House and the Senate and the fucking Supreme Court now, we're fucked for a couple generations.
Jesus.
Yeah, trust me. But honestly, it's allowed the racists to come out of the woodwork. It's allowed this shit to come out. It's definitely always been there, but these people who are like, oh, I have to be closeted about my racist feelings, they don't have to do that anymore, and they can go shout whatever the fuck they want on the streets.
Right. As for the LGBTQ rights, obviously, the shit's hit the fan. I feel like I know that things have. It seems like for every step forward, they're like 2 steps back. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say recently it's become even worse. I mean, Trump is having his Justice Department make it okay to discriminate based on pretty much if you're LGBTQ. If you're, to make it okay to discriminate against trans people, against, anyone else under that spectrum. He is trying to have it redefined to where gender cannot be changed after birth, and it is based solely on whatever genitals you come out with. And as you know, there are people who are born with both sets of genitals, so that really doesn't make sense to fucking begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I read a book. I mean, they're hermaphroditism. Is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know. I can't remember what the correct term is, but I know it's not that.
Yeah, it's not that. Okay, so here's the deal. There are. I've read books about men, or women or babies that come out with both male and female genitals, and and that's just not gonna fucking align with Trump's regime, and his thoughts, and I gotta tell you, Ashley, the whole thing with the bathrooms, I remember we were at work. You didn't see me, but I was watching you. That sounds really weird, but I wasn't stalking you or anything like that. But I was watching, and going, and I was like, I knew you were headed towards the restrooms, and I was like, please go to the girls' bathroom. Please go to the girls' bathroom, because like I was so afraid, because they've made it scary for transgender people to go to the which restroom that they correspond to. And when you went into the girls' bathroom, I like literally like in my desk was like cheering like silently. I was like, "Oh my god, you did it! Yes!" I mean, how do you? I mean, as far as the restroom thing, I mean, do you feel like self-conscious when you're in the girls' restroom? I mean, I know I do, but I'm joking. I don't go in the girls' restroom, guys.
Not down here. Not where I live now. And intersex was the term that I was looking for before. I did pull that up. So, yeah, definitely wouldn't align with Trump. But as for the bathroom situation, no, not here. Where my parents live, yeah, I have to be self-conscious about that because it's a very small area, and again, you don't cross lines, and I still know people up there, and people will out me up there if they know me. So I tend to. It's one of the reasons I tend to stay away from going out in public, really, in that area, is because I know how bad that area is, and I know there's still quite a few people who know me and who just don't like trans people. And these are all the same people who you'll find with, the lifted trucks with Confederate flag on the back of it. So, same kind of people.
I fucking hate those people.
Probably having too many guns. What I like to call a penis substitute.
Yeah. People with Confederate flags, like, seriously, it makes me sick. I mean, it's like, I don't get it. Do they just not realize that that's like a symbol of hatred? I mean, I know they're like, it's pride for the place we live in. I'm just like, no, genius, fucking asshole. It's a symbol of hate. Just like like if you were to put a swastika on like on the back of your car, would you say that that's you're proud to be German? Like it's to me it's. They're almost they're the same thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, there's a couple things here. First, the flag that they're going around is a modified version of the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia. I'm a huge history buff, so I think that one's right. I think I've got it on the nose with that. But it's a Confederate battle flag that they're going around with. It's not actually the Confederate flag. So First off, they're historically wrong. Second is a lot of them are too dumb to know this. A lot of them are people who are like, no, the Civil War was caused by states' rights. Whereas if you go read anything that has anything to do with Confederate history, the entire reason the Confederacy was formed was quite literally, and you go read any of the quotes by any of the Confederate leaders, to protect fucking slavery. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It comes down to after the Civil War, and when the Civil War veterans were dying, it comes down to the Daughters of the Confederacy, as what the group is called. That they're the ones who put up a shitload of statues in the South. They're the ones who have pushed revisionist history to be like, no, it wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights and the Union, abusing their powers and making these states not have the rights they should. No, it was literally because the South still wanted to have slaves, and the North was like, we don't want to have slaves, and we don't think new states should have slaves. And that's what it was about. I mean, Lincoln even said that if he could save the Union by not freeing any slaves, he would do it. If he could save it by freeing some and leaving others, he would do it. And if he could save it by freeing all slaves, he would do it. Pretty much, Lincoln didn't give a flying fuck what happened in the states that already had slavery. He just didn't want the country to fall apart.
Nice. Well, nobody ever said this podcast wasn't controversial. All right. Hey, you know what, though? That's good. And I got to say, that muffin looked delicious, by the way. I had it in that looked like a very delicious muffin. I can't eat that stuff, but it looked good. But yeah, no, just like there's so much revisionist history and so much written and over it. It's like an Etch-a-Sketch, you keep writing over and then you shake it out and then you have to keep, you start all over again, write something new about what really happened. What do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, shit, there's people who deny the Holocaust. Those 6 million Jews weren't killed.
Yeah,
not at all.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, they just went missing. Just, they were abducted by, it's just fucking ridiculous.
Those 6 million people never existed is pretty much how it goes.
Yeah, I know.
Or the figure is overinflated and it was a few 100,000. It's like, no, that's not at all what happened.
Yeah.
It's very obvious if you go actually read quotes by Nazi leaders. They wanted to kill Jewish people. It is very blatant. Yeah. And people are just fucking stupid.
Right. Yeah. I fucking hate people. Sorry. Which is weird because I have a podcast and I talk to people, but...
Kind of your job.
It's kind of my job to also talk to people. But anyway, moving on. On to lighter topics. So talk to me about, what your hobbies. What are your interests? I know you like sports.
Yes.
Right? What else? I'm not a sports guy myself. In fact, when my wife asked me, do you like sports? No. Do you play sports? No. You'll do. That was the benchmark that she was looking for. That was pretty much the value I added to our dynamic. Do you watch sports? No. Play sports? No. You're good. So,
well, yeah, definitely sports are a big thing. I am one of the editors for the E Pluribus Lunum Minnesota United soccer blog.
What's it called?
E Pluribus Lunum. It's Minnesota United's SB Nation blog.
Okay.
There's a good chance that over the course of the next year, I'll be moving into the managing editor position from the local soccer editor.
That sounds pretty prestigious.
It is what it is. You don't really get paid shit for it, but that's
struggling for our art, right?
Yeah, it's worth it though. It's not every day where you get to say, "Hey, guess what? I got to go into the press box at TCF Bank Stadium, and then I got to go down into the tunnel, have an interview with the players and with the head coach Adrian Heath." It's not every day where you get to say, "Oh, guess what? I just had an interview with the owner of the team, Dr. Bill McGuire, about moving to Allianz Field next year." I was actually at the lighting ceremony they held last weekend after the United match. I had to take off early from the final United match at TCF to get over to the lighting ceremony at Allianz Field in St. Paul. Hit the light rail, went over there, interviewed both Dr. Bill McGuire and the gentleman who has been heading up construction for Mortensen. So it's not every day that you get to do that, other people get to do that. A lot of what I cover is local soccer. So I've attended, games in pretty much every city in the NPSL's North Conference, and even two U.S. Open Cup matches in Duluth, and interviewed their head coach. Couldn't get an interview with Dakota Fusions the first match because he took off because they lost in penalty kicks. So,
Wow.
but that's
You get around.
yeah,
And hey, I get to interview you. That's pretty cool,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm not, this is, I don't know. This started out as just sort of a dream, and for me, I just like interviewing people that, that I admire, and you are definitely one of those people. And people that that I'm curious about, and people that share the common interests. So I'm really honored to have you here. That normally that comes at the beginning of the conversation, but we're midway in. Well, actually, we're a little bit past midway, but
yeah, and the writing, it started. I'd originally started writing just kind of sports pieces of what I felt like it. Eventually moved to pretty much focusing on indoor football and soccer. I stepped away from indoor football this year due to a lot of bullshit that was involved in the sport. But I still have a lot of friends. I've interviewed coaches from across the country. Mm-hmm. I'm in actually constant connection with one of the assistant coaches for the Carolina Cobras of the National Arena League. So I'm in Minnesota, and I know someone, and I'm probably going to fly out to Greensboro in the spring to go watch the Cobras. Just because I know the coaches. I know the coaching staff there. I have met quite a few of the players from the Iowa Barnstormers. I know a few of the coaches from there. I've met some players from the Cedar Rapids team, which has been renamed from the Titans to the River Kings. And I've talked to the general manager of that club as well. So as well as the previous owner, who, personally, he is a scumbag, and I don't care if he finds out that I said this. I've called him out on it before for being a scumbag. So moving towards that, I'm thinking I might get back into writing about indoor football next year. Cool. It's very satirical. It's very newsworthy, and it's very satirical, and I picked that up from there's a junior hockey website that does articles every so often called the Death Pool, and it's very
Pool.
Yes,
that sounds pretty serious.
Yeah, it's a combination of actual news and satire, and that's really where I found my footing in my writing for indoor football, because it takes a lot to have to work with that, because there's a lot of shit that goes on behind the scenes that most people don't know about, and that I'm like, this is something that I want to call out. So it's where I get a lot of my bitchiness out. It really is. And then really the other big hobby I have is professional wrestling is another big one.
Really?
Yes. In my free time, it's actually very good if I'm just doing something around the house, if I'm cleaning or whatever. It's nice background noise, because if you have good commentary, just like really with any sport, you can follow along without actually watching it. And I don't watch WWE, and in fact, that entire promotion can go fuck itself, and I'll get into that momentarily, because that also has to do with politics in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
Oh, just wonders.
I never knew, and now I feel like I'm about to.
Oh, you will.
Oh gosh.
But for the most part, the biggest promotion I watch is New Japan, of course, from Japan. Otherwise, I follow Ring of Honor and dabble a little bit with watching Major League Wrestling and Impact Wrestling. And then if all goes well, I'm going to start training under Ken Anderson, who formerly wrestled in WWE and Impact, which used to be known as TNA.
TNA?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah,
different TNA.
Yeah, it was total nonstop action. There's a reason they named the promotion it, and you got it. That's also why they renamed the promotion from that.
I would imagine so.
Yeah, sponsors really didn't want to pick it up, and they really should have never named it that in the first place. But yeah, if all goes well, I'll be training under Ken Anderson, and I think Eric Cannon might still be a trainer up there in Minneapolis at the Academy wrestling school.
Okay.
But back on the kind of politics side with WWE, and there's a good chance I'm going to cancel my network subscription because I don't feel like paying company $10 a month. Not only are they a billion dollar company, but they're running a show in Saudi Arabia next weekend. Yeah. Okay. And if you haven't heard, the Saudi government just murdered a U.S. permanent resident in Turkey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was the day they admitted the murder was premeditated at their embassy in Turkey. WWE happened to come out and say, yeah, we're still going to run this show in Saudi Arabia. So when I had looked everything up, the financial estimates were, well, if they cancel the show, they'll lose $2 to $3 million this year.
Right.
But if they go forward with the show, they're going to lose $12 to $15 million next year. And they're still going to go forward with the show. Honestly, they should either cancel it or move it. I don't care what the repercussions of it would be contract-wise, but this is they're holding it in a country as effectively a propaganda piece in a country that doesn't allow women to wrestle. And they're having this whole women's revolution and going to have an all-women's pay-per-view on Sunday, which is pretty much a reaction to the fact that people were pissed about them going to Saudi Arabia in the first place and women not being allowed to be on the card there.
I got nothing.
Pretty much the entire female core of their talent group was not allowed to go to Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
Yep. So they're in the midst of this whole women's revolution, which is pretty much, if you watched WWE 10 years ago, it was literally women who couldn't wrestle and were only there because they looked good. And now you actually have women who can wrestle, except for the Bellas, and they're both on the fucking show on Sunday. But you have women who can wrestle, who do it well, and now they're touting this as the first ever all women's pay-per-view. And there have been women's wrestling companies for decades. Fucking Japan has had their biggest promotion was, and the longest surviving one lasted 45 years, was called All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling. So
really,
this is not the first women's pay-per-view. In fact, it is by far probably the last that they're doing, because there's, Impact has done an all women's one. There are promotions in this country, Rise, Shimmer, and Shine, dedicated exclusively to women's wrestling. This is by far not the first one, and they're pretty much only doing this to cover their ass from the first Saudi Arabia incident. And now that you have, they're going to Saudi Arabia immediately after the Saudi government just murdered a U.S. permanent resident in Turkey on a third country's land. So it's just getting to be ridiculous, and I can't support any company who would be willing to just go buy that and be like, whatever, we're just going to take their money. And they keep saying it's for the part of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. It's not. It's because WWE is getting paid billions of dollars, millions of dollars a show for 10 years by the Crown Prince just to have shows there.
Wow.
If they would admit it was just about the money, I'd be a little better with that. But when they're saying no, they want to help improve the country, I'm going to call high bullshit on that, because you literally just ran a propaganda piece and had your biggest star shout out how well he was treated in Saudi Arabia, and how civil the place is, and how forward thinking the country is. And it's like, no, this is a place where, and I'd voiced this in actually my wrestling group. I had voiced the fact that this is a country where I would be put to death if I ever stepped foot on there. I literally cannot go to most countries in the Middle East, not only because I am trans, but also because I identify as queer. Most of the time I'm in same-sex relationships with other women. I would be put to death faster than you could say shit and snap your finger.
Shit.
Yeah, they would kill me that fast there.
Wow. Well,
chirp, chirp, chirp.
no, I'm just kidding. No,
I know, wonderful topics.
This is stuff that I'm learning too, and the thing is, it's good for me. I need this is brain food for me because I know nothing about this stuff. But do you mind if we go turn it back to you?
What do you want to know? What do you want me to go down the road now?
Sure. So, do you have any hopes, worries, fears about the upcoming surgery?
Well, really hopes, fears, and all that kind of stuff mostly have to do with the shit going on in this country.
Right.
The surgery, sure. I'm not sure when that's going to be. Mayo Clinic in Rochester, which is the closest one here. Right. The next closest one's actually in Chicago.
Yeah.
They have about a year-long waiting list for bottom surgery and about a 6-month waiting list for top surgery. Right. So that one's really not crossed my mind yet because I'm still thinking with needing to drop weight and go through both those surgeries. Okay. I'm probably thinking a 1.5 to 2 years down the road to finish both of those. I'm pretty much shooting to make sure these are both done. I'm hoping to get my top surgery done probably by the time I'm 27 or 28. Okay. And then no later than by the time I'm 30 to have my bottom surgery done, which gives me a good 4-year window. Really my hopes with everything else is to go through college or, and go through college and get a full-time job doing social work and move the fuck out of this country. I'm going to admit I don't want to live in the U.S. anymore. This is a terrible country on so many levels, and I have honestly looked at there's 3 countries that are really on my list, and Canada is one of them. Yeah. I know a few people up there. It's proximity. Germany is another, and Japan would be the third one. It would be those 3 that I'd be looking at moving to. But those are really my hopes and worries, is just that this country is going to continue going down the shitter because we have a Congress, we have a House, a Senate, and a Supreme Court, and the President, all controlled by a far right-wing Republican Party, and I don't think it's going to end well. This country is going to be fucked up for the next 50 plus years, and it's probably not going to be until after I'm dead that any of this can be reversed, depending on what the Supreme Court ends up doing, which is extremely depressing, and that's really what worries me, because I feel, in terms of this, I feel that, they're going to, as I said before, just stop the ability to change gender altogether, which is going to put the U.S. into third world status. It really will.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for young people who have gone through your struggles, who identify themselves as a different gender? Do you have any advice for them as far as how to how to deal with things, how to cope, how to live with it, and how to not be afraid?
Sadly, I don't have a catch-all because so much goes on a case-by-case basis, because there are people who have massively supportive families. Jazz Jennings, who's actually pretty much a celebrity, happens to have one of those. There's a lot of other people that have supportive families. Those kind of things you don't have to worry about. For people who have unsupportive families, it's not easy to cope with, because I've had to cope with that.
Right,
it's a struggle to push through every day of your life, knowing that you have to be something that you're not, regardless if you're male to female or female to male. You have to conform into a gender for how many years or decades that you don't fit into. It's really hard to give a cookie cutter answer.
Yeah.
Because, I have to admit, I've tried to kill myself before. I've tried to hang myself when I was a teenager.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's
well, teen suicide it's become a lot more prevalent in our society too.
It has, and especially just with LGBTQ people, because there's not a lot of support. What I really have to say isn't geared towards younger people, because there's a lot of resources that you can get, and that's really what you have to do. Is you have to put yourself, go on Facebook, go on Reddit, get involved in a supportive group, and a lot of people in those kind of groups will help pull you through these kind of things. But you also, it really comes down to family and to parents, that they need to be supportive, because if you're not supportive and your kid is trans, is non-binary, is anything under the sun that is different from the norm, and I don't even like saying that, because I don't fucking care about normal. I prefer to be abnormal.
What is normal?
And normal is what stupid people think is acceptable
and real.
Yeah. But really, anything, it just comes down to parents and to family to be accepting. Don't force your kids to fit into any gender stereotypes. When I eventually am able to adopt kids, because I can't have my own, I'm not going to push them into a gender stereotype. They can put themselves into a category or not into a category as they fucking wish. Because children should be able to just be children and then, decide on their own.
Absolutely.
And I'm sick and tired of hearing people think, oh, we're trying to force, people and train people to be transgender. No, I would not want anybody to go through the shit that I've gone through. I would not wish. I didn't wish to be trans. I didn't say, oh God, I want to be trans as a little kid. I want to be trans. I want to have to go through all this shit that society is going to push me into and make me feel like I don't exist and I should just go kill myself. No, I did not want that. I did not ask for it. And I don't want and no one would push anyone into being something that they're not. And that's our entire point, is don't force people to be something they're not. Let them be themselves and just accept them for who they are. And that's really what it comes down to, is mainly to parents and other family members, is just to accept people for who they are and for what they want to be. Because you preach that over, parents will preach that day and night over and over to their kids. Oh, you can be anything you want. And then their teenager comes out and is like, oh, I'm gay. Nope, that's not okay. Oh, I'm trans. Oh, nope, that's not okay. I'm non-binary. That's not okay. And then there's so many exceptions to this rule that you've set. Oh, you can be anything. Well, you just can't be these 87 things. And you can be like these 12 things. That's fine. You have to sit in this little pool over here. You can't be anything else. And people need to realize, just be supportive and don't force people into anything, really.
And and this is coming from coming from a place where I identify myself as bisexual.
Mm-hmm.
I for the longest time I didn't know what I was, and the thing was, I was told that I was confused, or I was told to be one thing and told to be another thing, and blah 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 blah. And I hear what you're saying, and there is no such thing as normal anymore, and that's okay. I mean, I think if you think that there's one normal human being on this earth, you're out of your goddamn fucking mind. Because I just and the thing is, I am in an amazing marriage where I am, I was afraid that my wife was going to leave me. When I told her that when I finally, I'd known, but you know what I mean? It was like one of those things where like, I just, like, oh my God, what's going to happen now? But, my wife is amazing, and she is extremely accepting of everything everybody under the sun. And, you gotta be thankful for people like that, because those are few and far between in this day and age, but yeah, I mean, and I appreciate you coming on the show, and I know that, you're not getting paid for this. Nobody gets paid. I don't get paid for this, but I mean, we've had a pretty intense talk. Would you say, do you have any final thoughts moving forward?
Realistically, just with everything, again, you need to vote these sons of bitches out who want to demonize everyone who pretty much isn't a straight white man, and make women not exist, and make anyone else not exist, because they want to, by making America great, what they want to do is they want to put us back into the 1850s,
right? Where
women don't exist. You have to fit into one of two norms. If you're a woman, again, you don't exist, and any minorities are slaves. That's pretty much what they want to do. Is they want to regress us 150 years, 160 years. So you need to do that, and you just need to surround yourself with positive role models, with positive people. In fact, the biggest reason that I'm actually going to go forward with my wrestling training is because I had reached out to a professional wrestler on the East Coast who's trans.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, let me get that up. I had a nice conversation with her. She goes by the name of Nyla Rose. She wrestles primarily on the East Coast. So if you ever can, go ahead and check out one of her shows. But I've actually seen an interview that she did with on a program called Wrestling with Regret, which is hosted by a guy on the West Coast by the name of Brian Zane. He did an interview with quite a few LGBTQ wrestlers a few years ago, so it is pretty old, but I reached out to her on Twitter, had a nice conversation with her, and that's the biggest reason why I'm like, I'm going to go jump into this, when I have the ability to drop the money on it, because it's not cheap to go do that training, and it takes a lot of hard work, but you can really do anything with hard work is what it comes down to.
All right, boys and girls. Thank you again to Ashley Norling for agreeing to be on the show. I really enjoyed our chat. It got pretty intense. There were a few times where I was just like, there were some crickets chirping, and some of that stuff went over my head. I'll admit it. I'm not that informed when it comes to the political landscape, simply because honestly I stopped watching the news a while back because frankly it depresses me, and I have so much time, only have so much time to listen to or watch the TV, and like, I don't know, I just plus we cut out our cable, so we don't really have any news to watch. But anyway, I'm sure that makes me look like an ignorant asshole, but there it is. But I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and as always, just be who you are. Be who you are and be proud of it. Just be proud of it. One day at a time.